Freeze! Hands up right now.
Whoa, I'm an employee. See, my badge is here.
Higher. Keep them where I can see them.
Okay, this is my county ID. I'm just trying to get in.
Don't move.
You can call security. They'll confirm me.
Stay put.
It was 5:47 a.m. on Monday, November 6, 2023, when Rachel Armstrong pulled into the employee parking garage beneath the Hennepin County Government Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The sun wouldn't rise for another hour and 12 minutes. The building was quiet, nearly empty except for security personnel and the occasional early arriving employee. Rachel liked these early morning hours. They gave her time to work without interruption, to review case files before her staff arrived to prepare for the week ahead. She had no idea that in the next 19 minutes, she would be handcuffed, arrested, and thrown into the back of a patrol car by an officer who would later claim he was just doing his job. That officer, Minneapolis Police Department Sergeant Derek Holloway, didn't know he had just arrested the woman responsible for prosecuting felonies in Hennepin County. The woman who had sent 214 criminals to prison in her 6 years as district attorney. The woman who had personally prosecuted 9 police officers for misconduct, securing convictions in 8 of those cases. The woman who was about to make Derek Holloway's life a case study in what happens when ignorance, bias, and authority collide with someone who has the power to dismantle your entire career. This story doesn't end with an apology and a handshake. It ends with a $2.1 million settlement, a 14-year federal prison sentence, the termination of 17 officers, and reforms so comprehensive that they would become a model for police departments across the country. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, city, state, country, wherever you are. And if you believe that every person deserves to enter their own workplace without being treated like a criminal, hit subscribe. You need to see where this goes, because what happens next will restore your faith that accountability still exists. Rachel Armstrong didn't look like what many people expected when they heard district attorney. She was a 41-year-old black woman who stood 5 feet 4 inches tall, wore her natural hair in locks that reached her shoulders, and had a smile that could disarm hostile witnesses and a courtroom presence that made defense attorneys prepare harder than they'd ever prepared in their lives. She had been elected district attorney for Hennepin County in 2017 with 62% of the vote, winning every precinct in Minneapolis and most of suburban Hennepin County. She had been re-elected in 2021 with 68% of the vote. Rachel's path to this position had been anything but typical. She grew up in South Minneapolis, the youngest of 4 children raised by a single mother who worked as a nurse at Hennepin County Medical Center. Money was always tight. College seemed impossible. But Rachel's mother had instilled something in all her children that money couldn't buy, a belief that education and hard work could overcome any obstacle. Rachel had been a brilliant student. She graduated second in her class. From Roosevelt High School, she earned a full academic scholarship to the University of Minnesota, where she majored in criminal justice and African American studies. She graduated summa cum laude with a 3.94 GPA. She took the LSAT and scored in the 97th percentile. She was accepted to the University of Minnesota Law School with a scholarship that covered full tuition. At law school, Rachel had found her calling. She wasn't interested in corporate law or intellectual property. She wanted to be a prosecutor. She wanted to stand in courtrooms and seek justice for victims. She wanted to use the law to protect communities. She clerked for the Hennepin County Attorney's Office during her 2L summer and knew immediately that this was her career path. After graduating in the top 8% of her law school class, Rachel joined the Hennepin County Attorney's Office as an assistant county attorney. She started in misdemeanors, DUIs, petty thefts, low-level assaults. She tried 23 cases in her first year and won 21 of them. She was promoted to the felony division after just 18 months, unusually fast for a prosecutor that young. In the felony division, Rachel handled everything: drug cases, robberies, sexual assaults, homicides. She developed a reputation for being thorough, strategic, and devastating in cross-examination. She could take apart a defendant's alibi with 3 questions. She could make a lying witness admit the truth without them realizing they'd done it. She prepared every case as if it were going to trial, which meant defendants often took plea deals rather than face her in front of a jury. Over 8 years as a line prosecutor, Rachel tried 71 felony cases. She won 67 of them. Her 94.4% conviction rate was the highest in the office. She specialized in complex cases that other prosecutors found intimidating: multi-defendant conspiracies, white-collar fraud schemes, cold cases with challenging evidence. She won them all. But Rachel became known for something else: her willingness to prosecute police officers when the evidence supported charges. Most prosecutors hesitated to charge cops. It made them unpopular with law enforcement. It created tension with the police union. It could derail a career. Rachel didn't hesitate. When a Minneapolis officer was caught on camera planting drugs during a traffic stop, Rachel prosecuted him for evidence tampering and official misconduct. Conviction: 4 years in prison. When 2 St. Paul officers were accused of excessive force that left a suspect with permanent injuries, Rachel filed charges. Conviction on both defendants. When a suburban department covered up a false arrest, Rachel went after the officers and the supervisors who had buried the complaint. 3 convictions. By the time Rachel ran for district attorney in 2017, she had prosecuted 6 police officers. She had won 5 of those cases. The 6th resulted in an acquittal on some charges, but conviction on others. Defense attorneys respected her. Victims' families trusted her. And law enforcement unions opposed her candidacy vigorously. The police union spent $400,000 trying to defeat her in the election. They ran ads claiming she was anti-police and soft on crime. The ads backfired. Voters saw through them. Rachel won in a landslide. As district attorney, Rachel had continued the work she'd started as a line prosecutor. She built a specialized unit focused on public integrity cases, government corruption, official misconduct, abuse of authority. She personally supervised every case involving law enforcement defendants. She prosecuted 3 more police officers during her first term, winning all 3 cases. She also reformed how the office worked. She implemented conviction integrity reviews to identify wrongful convictions. She created a diversion program for low-level offenders with substance abuse or mental health issues. She increased transparency by publishing data on charging decisions, plea deals, and sentencing recommendations. Rachel ran the office with 127 attorneys under her supervision. She managed a budget of $47 million. She made final decisions on which cases to charge, which to plea, which to dismiss. She testified before the state legislature on criminal justice issues. She spoke at national conferences about progressive prosecution. She was a rising star in Minnesota politics. Many people expected her to run for attorney general or even governor someday. But on that Monday morning in November, all Rachel wanted was to get some work done before the week started in earnest. She had a major trial starting Tuesday, a gang-related homicide with 3 defendants and complex evidence. She wanted to review witness statements one more time, make sure her trial team was ready, finalize her opening statement. Rachel parked her car, a modest Honda Accord, nothing flashy, in her assigned spot in the employee garage. She gathered her briefcase and her laptop bag. She was dressed professionally but not formally: black slacks, a burgundy blouse, a gray blazer, low heels. Her district attorney ID badge was clipped to her blazer lapel, clearly visible. She walked to the employee entrance, a side door that required key card access. County employees used this entrance to avoid the main public entrance, which didn't open until 8 a.m. Rachel had been using this entrance for years, first as a prosecutor, now as DA. She must have entered through this door 1,000 times. She pulled her key card from her pocket. It had her photo, her name, and her title. Rachel Armstrong, District Attorney, Hennepin County. She waved it over the card reader. The light turned green. The lock clicked open. That's when she heard the voice behind her, sharp and commanding. "Freeze! Put your hands up and step away from that door." Rachel turned around, startled. A Minneapolis police officer was approaching her rapidly from across the parking garage, his hand on his service weapon. He was white, probably mid-40s, with graying hair and the kind of build that suggested he spent more time behind a desk than on patrol. His nameplate read Holloway. Sergeant Derek Holloway was 46 years old, 22 years with the Minneapolis Police Department. Currently assigned as a patrol supervisor in the 3rd Precinct. He had been driving past the government center when he saw a black woman entering the building through a side entrance before sunrise. Something about it struck him as wrong, suspicious, out of place. He didn't see a professional woman going to work early. He saw a potential burglar. Rachel's initial confusion gave way to comprehension, then to frustration. She recognized what was happening because she'd seen it happen to dozens of black professionals in cases she'd prosecuted. Assumptions based on race, suspicion based on bias, authority asserted before facts were gathered. "Excuse me?" Rachel said, her voice calm but firm. "I'm unlocking my office. I work here." Holloway approached with his hand still near his weapon. "You're breaking and entering. This building is closed. Hands up now, or I will use force." Rachel took a breath. She held up her keycard so Holloway could see it. "Officer, look at my keycard. I have authorized access. I'm the district attorney for this county." Holloway barely glanced at the card. His mind was already made up. "Sure you are. And I'm the mayor. Turn around. Hands behind your back. You're under arrest for burglary and providing false information to a police officer." Rachel felt anger rising, but kept it controlled. She'd prosecuted enough false arrest cases to know exactly what was happening and exactly how to document it. She spoke clearly, knowing the garage security cameras were recording. "My name is Rachel Armstrong. I am the elected district attorney. I prosecute felonies in this jurisdiction, including cases of false arrest and civil rights violations. I suggest very strongly that you verify who I am before you make a decision you cannot undo. This building has 14 security cameras recording us right now." She gestured toward the cameras mounted throughout the garage. Then she pointed to her ID badge clipped to her lapel. "This is my official identification. It has my photo, my name, and my title. I entered this building with an authorized keycard. I have committed no crime. If you arrest me, you will be named as a defendant in a federal lawsuit, and I will personally ensure your actions are reviewed by every oversight body with jurisdiction." Most officers, hearing that they're about to arrest the district attorney and that cameras are recording, would pause, would look at the ID badge more carefully, would call a supervisor, would verify the information before committing to an arrest. Derek Holloway was not most officers. "I said turn around," Holloway repeated, pulling out his handcuffs. "You can tell your story at the station." Rachel made a decision. She could refuse, assert her rights and risk escalation, or she could comply, document everything, and unleash consequences later. She thought about her mother's advice: pick your battles, but never forget the war. "I am complying under duress and protest," Rachel said clearly, speaking toward the nearest camera. "I am Rachel Armstrong, the Hennepin County District Attorney. I am being unlawfully arrested by Sergeant Derek Holloway for entering my own office. I have committed no crime. This arrest is without probable cause and appears to be motivated by racial bias." She turned around and placed her hands behind her back. The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. A sitting district attorney, the chief law enforcement official for the county. the person responsible for prosecuting felonies and supervising 127 prosecutors, being arrested for going to work early. Rachel felt the cold metal against her wrists and thought about every defendant she'd ever prosecuted who claimed they'd been arrested without cause. Some of them had been lying, but some hadn't. And now she understood, viscerally, what it felt like to be powerless in the face of authority, even when you knew, absolutely knew, that what was happening was wrong. Holloway walked Rachel to his patrol car. Other early arriving employees were starting to filter into the garage. A few stopped and stared. One pulled out a phone and started recording. Rachel noticed but said nothing. More evidence. More documentation. Holloway opened the back door of his patrol car and guided Rachel inside. The back seat smelled like industrial cleaner and stale fast food. The plastic seat was hard and cold. There was a metal screen separating the back from the front. Rachel sat perfectly still, her mind already constructing the legal framework. Fourth Amendment, unlawful arrest. 14th Amendment, equal protection violation. Potential civil rights charges under 18 U.S.C. Paragraph 242's. Evidence. Multiple camera angles, witness. Statements. Her visible ID badge. The keycard access logs. Holloway got in the front seat. He picked up his radio. 3 Lincoln 7, I have one in custody for burglary at the government center. Female, black, approximately 40 years old. Transporting to 3rd Precinct for booking? Dispatch responded. Copy 3 Lincoln 7. What's the suspect's name? Holloway paused. He realized he hadn't actually asked. Suspect refused to provide identification. That was a lie. Rachel had told him her name. She had shown him her ID badge. She had identified herself as district attorney multiple times. From the back seat, Rachel spoke. That's false, Sergeant Holloway. I identified myself multiple times. I told you my name is Rachel Armstrong and I'm the district attorney. You chose not to verify that information. Holloway ignored her. He started driving. Rachel checked her watch. 5:53 a.m. She had been detained for 6 minutes. She thought about her staff arriving at 8 a.m. and finding her missing. She thought about the trial starting tomorrow that she needed to prepare for. She thought about the press coverage this would generate and how to manage the narrative. Mostly she thought about Derek Holloway's career and how it was about to end. The drive to the 3rd Precinct station took 11 minutes. Holloway didn't speak. Rachel didn't either. She just watched the city pass by through the window and mentally drafted the press release she'd be issuing later that day. They arrived at the precinct at 6:04 a.m. Holloway parked and escorted Rachel inside. The booking area was quiet. Monday morning graveyard shift. Not much activity. The desk sergeant on duty was a woman named Patricia Chen, a 15-year veteran who had seen enough questionable arrests to develop good instincts about which ones were going to become problems. This one set off every alarm she had. Chen looked up as Holloway brought Rachel in. She saw a professional black woman in business attire, calm and composed, with an ID badge clearly visible on her lapel. She saw Holloway looking uncomfortable and defensive. "What's the charge?" Chen asked. "Burglary. Caught her breaking into the government center through a side entrance." Chen's eyes went to Rachel's ID badge. She couldn't read it from across the room, but she could see there was an official-looking badge. "Does the suspect have identification?" "She's got some fake badge," Holloway said dismissively. "Claims to be the DA." Chen stood up immediately. "Excuse me?" "She says she's the district attorney, obviously lying." Chen walked around her desk and approached Rachel. She looked at the ID badge clipped to Rachel's lapel. Official Hennepin County seal. Professional photo. Clear text. Rachel Armstrong, district attorney. Chen looked at Rachel's face, then back at the ID, then pulled out her phone and did a quick Google search. Rachel Armstrong, Hennepin County district attorney. Images populated immediately. Official county website, photos, news articles, press conference videos. The woman in those images was the woman standing in handcuffs in front of her. Chen's face went pale. She looked at Holloway with an expression that combined horror and fury. "You arrested the district attorney?" The booking area went silent. Other officers stopped what they were doing. Holloway's face flushed red. "She was entering the building through a side entrance at 5:45 in the morning. How was I supposed to know?" "She's wearing her official ID badge," Chen interrupted, her voice sharp. "It's right there on her lapel. Did you look at it?" "She could have stolen it." "Did you verify her identity before arresting her? Did you call the government center security? Did you ask to see her keycard access? Did you do anything except see a black woman and assume she was a criminal?" Holloway had no good answer. Chen turned to Rachel. "Ma'am, Your Honor, District Attorney Armstrong, I apologize on behalf of this department. I'm removing these handcuffs immediately, and we're releasing you." "Not yet," Rachel said, her voice calm but firm. "First, I want Sergeant Holloway's supervisor called. I want the watch commander here. I want this incident documented in writing. I want body camera footage preserved. I want the dispatch recordings. I want everything that happened this morning documented before I leave this building." Chen nodded quickly. "Absolutely, I'll get the watch commander right now." Chen picked up a phone and dialed. "Commander Brooks, I need you in booking immediately. We have a situation." She paused. "Sergeant Holloway just arrested District Attorney Rachel Armstrong." There was apparently a loud response from the other end because Chen held the phone away from her ear. "Yes, sir. The actual district attorney. She's here now in handcuffs." "Yes, sir. Right away." "Have you ever been accused of a crime you didn't commit just because someone made assumptions? Let me know in the comments." "Commander?" Michael Brooks arrived in booking 90 seconds later, moving faster than a man of 58 typically moved. He was the 3rd Precinct Watch Commander, a 32-year veteran who had managed countless crises during his career. He had never managed one quite like this. He looked at Rachel, still in handcuffs, her ID badge visible. He looked at Holloway, who had gone from defensive to terrified. He looked at Chen, who was clearly trying to contain her anger. "District Attorney Armstrong," Brooks said, his voice formal and apologetic. "On behalf of the Minneapolis Police Department, I want to express our deepest apologies for what has occurred. This should never have happened." "Remove the handcuffs," Rachel said, "then we'll discuss what happens next." Chen moved forward quickly and removed the cuffs. Rachel rubbed her wrists. She'd been in handcuffs for 18 minutes. The metal had left red marks on her skin that would later be photographed as evidence. Brooks gestured toward his office. "District Attorney Armstrong, would you be willing to step into my office so we can discuss this?" "No," Rachel said. "Everything that needs to be said can be said right here, in front of witnesses and cameras. I was arrested without probable cause by Sergeant Holloway at 5:52 a.m. while entering my office at the government center using my authorized keycard access. I identified myself multiple times. I showed my official ID badge. I informed Sergeant Holloway that his actions were being recorded by building security cameras. He arrested me anyway." She paused, looking directly at Holloway. "Sergeant Holloway told dispatch that I refused to provide identification. That is a false statement. I provided my name and showed my badge repeatedly. He chose not to verify my identity. Instead, he saw a black woman entering a building early in the morning and assumed I was committing a crime." Rachel turned back to Brooks. "I want a complete incident report from Sergeant Holloway documenting his basis for the stop, his basis for the arrest, and his explanation for why he did not verify my identity before placing me in handcuffs. I want all body camera footage. I want dispatch recordings. I want building security footage. I want everything preserved and provided to my office by close of business today." Brooks nodded. "You'll have everything." I also want Sergeant Holloway suspended pending investigation. Holloway finally spoke. Ma'am, I was responding to what I believed was a burglary in progress. Rachel cut him off with a look that prosecutors reserve for hostile witnesses who are about to perjure themselves. You believed a burglary was in progress based on what specific facts? A woman using a key card to unlock a door? Someone entering a building where they worked? Or did you assume criminal activity because you saw a black woman in a location where you thought she didn't belong? Holloway opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer that wouldn't make things worse. That's what I thought, Rachel said. She turned back to Brooks. Suspend him. Today. And you might want to contact your city attorney because I'll be filing a federal civil rights lawsuit by end of week. Rachel walked out of the 3rd Precinct at 6:34 a.m. She had been detained for 47 minutes. She drove back to the government center, parked in her assigned spot, walked to the same employee entrance where she'd been arrested, and used her key card to enter the building exactly as she'd tried to do an hour earlier. This time, nobody stopped her. She went to her office, sat at her desk, and began making calls. Call 1. Her chief deputy DA, explaining what had happened and instructing him to postpone the trial starting tomorrow. Call 2. The mayor of Minneapolis, waking him up to inform him that his police department had just arrested the county district attorney. Call 3. The FBI's Minneapolis field office, formally requesting a civil rights investigation. Call 4. Her personal attorney, Marcus Williams, a civil rights lawyer who had won $14 million in settlements from Minneapolis PD in the past 5 years. Marcus, I need you to sue the Minneapolis Police Department. Rachel, what happened? She told him. When she finished, there was a long silence. They arrested you for entering your own office. Yes. While you were wearing your DA badge? Yes. After you identified yourself multiple times? Yes. This is going to be massive. I know. Make it count. By 8 a.m., when Rachel's staff started arriving, the story had already leaked. A reporter from the Star Tribune had a source at the 3rd Precinct and broke the news. Hennepin County DA arrested while entering office, alleges racial profiling. The story exploded. Local news picked it up first, then statewide media, then national outlets. By noon, CNN, MSNBC, and the major networks were running segments about the district attorney arrested for going to work while black. The building security footage was released that afternoon through a public records request filed by the ACLU. 14 different camera angles showing Rachel approaching the employee entrance using her key card, being confronted by Holloway, showing her ID badge, being handcuffed, being walked to the patrol car. The footage went viral. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed 18 million times. Within a week, over 45 million people had watched the Hennepin County District Attorney get arrested for entering her own office. Legal experts across the country weighed in. This is one of the clearest cases of racial profiling I've ever seen, said a University of Minnesota law professor on CNN. She's wearing her official ID badge. She's using authorized access. She identifies herself repeatedly, and she still gets arrested. The only explanation is racial bias. Civil rights organizations made the case a national issue. The NAACP held a press conference in Minneapolis demanding systemic reform. Black Lives Matter organized protests outside the 3rd Precinct. The National Bar Association, representing black attorneys nationwide, issued a statement condemning the arrest and calling for federal intervention. The Minneapolis Police Department opened an internal investigation, but everyone knew it was performative. The real investigation came from the FBI. FBI agents spent 3 months analyzing everything. They reviewed all of Holloway's body camera footage from the past 5 years. They pulled his arrest records. They interviewed people he'd detained or arrested. They analyzed patterns. What they found was disturbing, but not surprising. Over his 22-year career, Sergeant Derek Holloway had made 412 arrests. Of those arrests, 338 had been of black individuals, 82% of his total arrests, in a city that was 19% black. His arrest rate of black individuals was 6.3 times higher than would be expected based on demographics. The FBI also found that Holloway had been the subject of 11 complaints of racial profiling over his career. All 11 complaints had been investigated by Minneapolis PD's Internal Affairs Division. All 11 had been marked not sustained or unfounded. Not a single complaint had resulted in any discipline. But when FBI agents reviewed the complaint files, they found consistent patterns. Holloway routinely stopped black people in nice neighborhoods, questioned their right to be there, demanded identification, and arrested them for minor violations or obstruction when they questioned his authority. In 2015, Holloway had arrested a black doctor for loitering outside his own clinic because he was checking the parking meters before his staff arrived. In 2018, Holloway had detained a black family for suspicious behavior because they were loading moving boxes into a house they had just purchased in a predominantly white neighborhood. In 2021, Holloway had arrested a black high school teacher for trespassing in her own school parking lot on a Saturday because she'd come in to grade papers. All three had filed complaints. All three complaints had been dismissed. None of the individuals had the resources or platform to fight back effectively, until Holloway arrested someone who did. The FBI also discovered something else. Holloway had failed a psychological evaluation during a promotion review in 2019. The evaluation had noted concerning attitudes regarding race and recommended additional training before Holloway could be promoted. That recommendation had been ignored. Holloway had been promoted to sergeant anyway. On February 14, 2024, 3 months after Rachel's arrest, a federal grand jury returned an indictment, United States of America versus Derek James Holloway, Count 1. Deprivation of rights under color of law, 18 U.S.C. Paragraph 242. False arrest of Rachel Armstrong. Count 2. Deprivation of rights under color of law. False arrest of Dr. Marcus Bennett. 2015, Count 3. Deprivation of rights under color of law. Unlawful detention of the Richardson family. 2018, Count 4. Deprivation of rights under color of law. False arrest of Teresa Washington. 2021. Count 5. Filing false police reports. 18 U.S.C. Paragraph 1, 3 counts. Count 6. Conspiracy to obstruct justice. 18 U.S.C. Paragraph 1503. Holloway was arrested by FBI agents and held without bail after prosecutors argued he posed a flight risk. But the indictment didn't stop with Holloway. The FBI had also indicted 4 supervisors who had dismissed the complaints against him over the years. They were charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice and deprivation of rights for their roles in covering up Holloway's pattern of misconduct. The trial began in June 2024. Rachel testified for 2 full days. She walked the jury through every moment of her arrest with the clarity and precision that had made her one of the most effective prosecutors in Minnesota. Sergeant Holloway had multiple opportunities to verify my identity, Rachel told the jury. I was wearing my official ID badge. I told him my name and title. I explained that I worked in the building. I pointed out the security cameras recording us. At any point, he could have looked at my badge more carefully. He could have called building security. He could have verified the key card access. He chose not to do any of those things. Why? Because he had already decided I was a criminal based on the color of my skin. The prosecutor, a federal AUSA named David Martinez, asked, "How did being arrested make you feel?" Rachel paused. Prosecutors don't usually talk about their feelings. They deal in facts and evidence. But this was different. Humiliated, Rachel said quietly. Powerless, angry. I've been a prosecutor for 14 years. I've stood in courtrooms hundreds of times seeking justice for victims. And in that moment, I was the victim. I was being treated like a criminal for going to work. And I understood, for the first time truly understood, what every black person I'd ever prosecuted felt when they claimed they'd been arrested without cause. The defense argued that Holloway had made an honest mistake based on reasonable suspicion. The prosecution destroyed that argument by calling the other victims. Dr. Bennett testified about being arrested outside his own clinic. The Richardson family testified about being detained while moving into their new home. Teresa Washington testified about being arrested at her own school. All of them told the same story. Holloway saw black people in places he thought they didn't belong and arrested them for having the audacity to question his assumptions. The jury deliberated for 14 hours. On June 28, 2024, they returned guilty verdicts on all counts for Holloway and 3 of the 4 supervisors. The sentencing hearing was held on August 15, 2024. Federal Judge Amanda Richardson, who had presided over the trial, looked down at Holloway from the bench. "Mr. Holloway, you violated the constitutional rights of District Attorney Armstrong and numerous other individuals over many years. You did so knowingly and repeatedly. When your victims complained, supervisors who should have held you accountable instead protected you. This pattern of misconduct represents a betrayal of your oath and a corruption of the principles you were sworn to uphold." Judge Richardson paused. The guidelines suggest a sentence of 10 to 12 years. Given the pattern of conduct, the abuse of authority, and the impact on the community's trust in law enforcement, the sentence of this court is 14 years in federal prison. The 3 supervisors received sentences ranging from 4 to 7 years. Rachel's civil lawsuit settled before trial. The city of Minneapolis, facing the prospect of taking this case before a jury with Rachel's testimony and the viral video footage, offered $2.1 million. Rachel accepted, but only with conditions. The settlement required complete dissolution of the 3rd Precinct's current structure, termination of 17 officers who had multiple sustained complaints, implementation of an early warning system flagging officers with patterns of racially disparate stops, creation of an independent civilian oversight board with subpoena power, mandatory bias training for all officers, 100 hours initial, 20 hours annual public release of all stop data by race, neighborhood, and outcome federal monitoring for 5 years. Body cameras required for all uniformed officers with automatic discipline for failures to record. Rachel donated the entire $2.1 million settlement to organizations providing legal representation for people who couldn't afford attorneys in civil rights cases. "I didn't file this lawsuit for money," Rachel said at a press conference. "I filed it for change, for accountability, for every black person who's been treated like a criminal, for existing in spaces where someone thought they didn't belong." The impact extended far beyond the settlement. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara resigned under pressure. 2 deputy chiefs were fired. The entire 3rd Precinct command structure was reorganized. Minnesota's legislature passed the Rachel Armstrong Act, requiring all Minnesota police departments to track stop data by race and report it publicly. The law also created a state-level oversight board to investigate complaints that local departments failed to address. The case became a catalyst for reform across Minnesota and beyond. 8 other cities implemented similar reforms. 3 states passed legislation modeled on Minnesota's new law. Derek Holloway is currently serving his sentence at FCI Sandstone in Minnesota. He'll be eligible for release in 2038. His law enforcement certification has been permanently revoked. His pension was forfeited. Rachel Armstrong continued her work as district attorney. She was re-elected in 2025 with 74% of the vote, her highest total yet. Voters appreciated that she had turned her personal experience into systemic change. She's prosecuted 6 additional officers for misconduct since her arrest, winning all 6 cases. She's expanded her office's Conviction Integrity Unit, which has now overturned 23 wrongful convictions. She's become a national voice on criminal justice reform, testifying before Congress twice about police accountability. She still arrives at work early, still uses the same employee entrance, still carries the same key card. But now, when she enters that building, there's a plaque near the door. It reads, "In November 2023, District Attorney Rachel Armstrong was unlawfully arrested while entering this building. Her experience and her response led to reforms that have protected the rights of thousands. May we never forget that justice requires constant vigilance and the courage to demand accountability." Rachel sees that plaque every morning. It reminds her why the work matters. The footage of her arrest is still online, still being viewed, still being taught in law schools and police academies. Over 60 million people have watched it. It's used to teach Fourth Amendment law, to illustrate racial profiling, to show why assumptions based on race are both wrong and illegal. What's the most important lesson from Rachel's story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this showed you why police accountability and bias training aren't optional, they're essential, make sure you're subscribed. We're bringing you more stories that prove change is possible when people refuse to accept injustice. Rachel Armstrong had every advantage. She was the district attorney. She knew the law as well as anyone in Minnesota. She had the institutional power to fight back. She had the platform to demand change. And she still got arrested for going to work while black. Think about everyone who doesn't have those advantages. Everyone who gets stopped in their own neighborhoods. Everyone who gets questioned for being in places where they belong. Everyone who gets arrested when they assert their rights. Everyone who doesn't have a DA's office and an FBI investigation backing them up. Rachel's case shows that racial bias affects everyone, regardless of position or power. But it also shows that accountability is possible, that officers can go to prison, that departments can be reformed, that one person's courage to demand justice can create change that protects thousands. Not every wrongful arrest ends with a 14-year sentence and $2.1 million in reforms. But this one did, and that matters. Thanks for watching. If this story showed you why we can't stop fighting for justice and accountability, share it. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're committed to bringing you stories that prove the system can work when people make it work. Final question: should officers who show clear patterns of racial bias be removed before they violate someone's rights? What would real accountability look like in your community? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next one.